All right, what is up, everybody? We are talking some XFL and USFL action. Although there's not much XFL to talk tonight, we're mostly going to be focused on the USFL tonight. Let's start with Freddie, and let's go around and introduce ourselves real quick. Freddie, why don't you introduce yourself and your podcast as well?
What's up? I'm Freddie Airmail. This is, I think, the first time I've been on this channel in back-to-back weeks on this show. It's also the first time in a while that I've showed up at the start of a show. You might know last week I popped in when someone was having trouble internet or we needed someone. But I'm here. I'm here from the start. And I don't have a podcast right now. The podcast that I did have through fan-controlled sports and entertainment is on hiatus right now, but the episodes are still up on there, Spotify and everywhere else you can get your podcast. It's called Freddie Stat Go. We put out about 14 episodes, I want to say, me and my co-host. Maybe some of it won't be as timely as it was back when we put it out, but you can still find me on the fan-controlled TV, their program. You can find me every Tuesday night on the Info Arcade, and you can find me every other afternoon on Back to Work on Mondays. I just had my segment this week, so I'll be off next week, but I'll be back, in 2 weeks.
Very nice, very nice. I was not aware that you guys were on hiatus right now, so we'll definitely have to try and get you on more of these while you've got a little bit of break, I guess.
Yeah.
And then we got Pierce. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and your channel as well?
How's it going, guys? It's Pierce Sports Productions. I have a YouTube channel, just Pierce Sports Productions. You might know me from my Cavante Turpin video. That one's like I think over 43,000 last check. That's probably my biggest one. And like a week ago, I did post a video about Quinn Flowers, who did play for the Tampa Bay Vipers. He played for Orlando Guardians for a little bit, and the FCF Fan Control Football Beasts. So check that out whenever you get the time. And just find me anywhere on social media as Pierce Sports Productions. But yeah.
Michael, how about you, buddy?
Primarily a Sam Shady or a Shady sports analyst. You can find me here. I do have something in the works, in the European League of Football possible show here in the next couple weeks that I've been toying with the idea. After week one, I'm kind of committing to it. So look for that. I don't know when it will drop or if it will be live. It'll probably be recorded. I don't know about all that just yet, but that will be coming. And you can find me on Twitter at MW77, 77 spelled out. And that's basically about all I got. I do have a Dynasty Academy fantasy sports podcast that's on hiatus right now myself. Hopefully when we get that back up and running, we'll be actually here as a simultaneous split. We'll talk about more about that down the road, but you can find that on, I think it's like Spotify and stuff right now. So
it's definitely on Spotify. I can attest to that. That's where I've caught it. But you could definitely also catch his recent interview with John DeFilippo, which is now up on our YouTube channel. So definitely check that out. If not, right now, probably after we're done with the show. But definitely also includes defensive back Joe Powell from the Arlington Renegades, who we all know just won an XFL championship. So pretty cool little stack there. A man who's won a Super Bowl, a man who's won an XFL championship very recently. So that was really cool. Krish hosted the Joe Powell interview. Michael Washington hosted John DeFilippo, as he's the Breakers fan in the house. So kind of cool interview for me to see as well, given that I'm a huge Eagles fan.
Oh, it was so surreal, dude. And the fact that you had to listen to me talk about the Eagles, I'm sure made you very happy too, Sam.
Oh, it didn't hurt my feelings, that's for sure. Yeah, definitely. It was cool. It was really cool. I mean, if we were gonna have any coach in the USFL on, he was the guy that I was really excited to have on for sure. But without boring you guys anymore about that, little detail. You guys can catch that after this, but we'll go ahead and get into this week's games. The first game this weekend was the Houston Gamblers at the Pittsburgh Maulers, which actually turned into a pretty good game, despite the fact that it was not very high scoring, only 39 points total. Let's go to Freddie first. Freddie, were you surprised by this game, or where were your projections at prior to this week?
I thought I remembered, we were talking last week about Houston's defense and how it's been pretty bad. And so I think what I was saying was that I still expected them to win, which they ended up doing, but I think I also expected it to be closer than people were expecting, which it turned into. It was a little surprising to see the Maulers have the lead that they had before they blew the lead that they had. But overall, I think it ended up turning into the kind of game that I was anticipating.
That's fair. That's fair. Pierce, what did you think about this game?
So I did miss watching it, and I then run it back and then went over the play-by-play. My takeaways coming out for this game is Mahler still can't finish games. Like, this was theirs for the taking. They should have won this game. Troy Williams is a dog. That dude was really good. I thought he was impressive. The wide receiver core he's got, really great. I think Mondre London had a couple good runs, but ultimately they just were short. Like, that Gamblers' defense was bad all the way up until the last two drives, and they were able to shut them down. It was sad. Like, the Maulers should have won that. I think they're playing better than the record, but it's another game they choked. Mark Thompson, Offensive Player of the Year, should be. He saved the Gamblers' lives that game. They should have lost it. Mark Thompson, should go to the NFL after this because he's the reason. And Bahar, bench him. Bring in Terry Wilson. Bring in Kosar. Bring in somebody else because as a Stallions fan going to go against them next week, I'm not scared of Bahar.
Absolutely. Michael, you want to answer that one, or do you want me to do?
Oh, I could definitely answer that, Jim B. The Maulers changed their coach. They pretty much, I think it was most of the coaching staff as a whole, if not the whole thing, wasn't it? Didn't they go from Kirby?
Maulers pretty much stayed the same.
Oh, it was Houston. Sorry, it was Houston.
Yeah,
it was
you're
just
right.
The head coach that changed for Pittsburgh. Right, that's right. It was they went from Kirby Wilson to Ray Horton, and unfortunately for Ray Horton, the results and the record are not there right now because they can't finish games like Pierce said. But I think they're the second best team in the North, and if they could find a way to finish these games, it would be something that would be a little bit. I don't know. This team is so close to being 4-4 just as much as they are 2-6, if not 5-3, as they are 2-6, because they just can't finish games. But if Troy Williams is a dog, as Pierce said, and if they can turn this around and finish out these next two games, they could easily slide into that playoff spot. And I think they could actually give Philadelphia some trouble, if you want my honest opinion there.
No, that's completely fair. I thought the same thing. Go ahead, Freddie.
Could I throw in one more thing before you share any thoughts?
Go for it.
I don't know if you got to watch back last week's show, but one of the things I went in on a lot, I feel, was time of possession in these games.
Yes.
And how, that's something I'm paying attention to more in these games than I feel like I've ever really paid any attention to. And I think the Fox Sports website had it wrong, on a couple of games. At some points they weren't totally getting it right. But if they have it right now, what they're listing for this game is that Houston had the ball for 20 minutes and 13 seconds. The Maulers almost had the ball for 40 minutes. And they still, it was still as close as it was.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That is, if this is right, I think at one point it was almost flipped what it was displaying. And so it's hard to, I'm starting to have trust issues with this website, but if that's right, that's crazy. And
the Maulers' defense, I think, has been one of the key components to keeping them in games as well. Is this defense? It's just the offense has been so inconsistent down the stretch, and that's really where their inability to finish games, like their time of possession, is. You said it was on the better half for them in this game. Like, I feel like their time of possession is heavier at the beginning of the game, and then the end of the game it kind of falters. So if they can just finish it out, I honestly think this Pittsburgh team is on the cusp of being able to turn the season around. I know it's weird saying that coming out of week 8, but they're only one game out of a playoff spot. So if they can close this out and get into it, I think Pittsburgh is a team that might surprise some people, and maybe we'll see an Arlington Renegades-esque type run. Who the hell knows? You know.
One of the wild things that I just remembered with Sam pulling this up is you see the time of possession on there, but they had the same number of drives. These two teams both had 8 drives, and one of the things that also astounded me about the Maulers, I was looking up how Madre London was doing, because he played in fan-controlled football in their first season, and so I was doing kind of a for my segment on their show today. I was doing sort of a where are they now for some players that played for them before, and he leads the Maulers running backs in rushing yards right now, but Troy Williams is outdoing them all with somewhere around like just under 300, I want to say.
Well, they haven't had a run game for most of the year, unfortunately.
Right. That's
last week.
Kind of what I'm thinking. That's
week,
what I've been thinking is it would really help them to, that might be the missing piece.
100%. I mean, we talk about not being able to close out games, lack of time of possession, and although that wasn't an issue in this game, I mean, yeah, their run game, it needs help, definitely, and it can't be all Troy Williams. To Pierce's credit, I think I'll double check right here before I say anything foolish, but only 6 incomplete passes on the game, 76.9% completion rate, which is pretty unbelievable at any level of football, let alone the fact that we're talking about pretty quality competition. I mean, I know, Houston's not the greatest defense in the world or greatest secondary in the world, but still a solid performance nonetheless, as well as the 36 yards on the ground as well and a touchdown. So, I mean, he basically was this offense, and I think that if you get a little bit more going around him, the Maulers are going to look like a totally different team.
But if you look down, their leading rusher only had 8 attempts, and he averaged 5.1 yards in average. If you get that 8, Madre London's 8 up to 14 at 5.1, it's a whole different ballgame. Like Garrett Groshek, 11 attempts for 22 yards. He averaged 2 yards a carry. So at that point in time, why is he even carrying the ball 11 times? Like that is a problem. Like you got to follow trends, and I don't want to put the blame on Coach Horton at all by any means, but somebody on that staff isn't following the trends, because the yards per average should have automatically been like Groshek 2 yards, Madre London 5.1. What could we do there? And I think pretty obviously, to me, in my opinion, to Freddie's point, Madre London should have absolutely been carrying that ball, double the amount of Groshek.
Yeah. Even if that average dips on, carrying the ball more, you still, it shouldn't drop precipitously. You should still be getting, a good maybe 4.5 yards out of an increased workload. I think I did the math, and Troy Williams is somewhere around 2/3 of the total yardage rushing and passing for this team. Which I'd have to go and check for everyone else, but that is very high. Intuitively, I'm assuming that's a pretty high number compared to what you probably want. You probably don't want too much of the load on that one guy's shoulders, even if he is doing pretty well with that load on his shoulders. It would be nice to, give him a break more often than they have and get more guys in the mix. London, other guys who could do that. And but it might be too late at this point to really turn things around.
Well, with as bad as this North Division is, it's pretty wide open still, especially with everybody losing this week. I believe the Maulers still technically have the inside track at the number 2 seed. I'd have to look at the standings if I'm not mistaken.
I think there's 3 because the Stars are 1, and I think Panthers have a win over them.
You're right, Panthers.
The Panthers
Stars
the Panthers have 3 wins. Pittsburgh is only 1 game out, or I think it might be a game and a half. But I think Michigan and Pittsburgh play each other one more time here down the stretch, don't they?
Yeah.
Because the remaining 2 weeks, there's
that's
2.
This week, yes.
That's this week, yeah. So,
right.
So if Pittsburgh ends up winning this one, then I think that the tiebreaker would go to whatever their second tiebreaker is. We could see the St. Louis and Seattle situation from the XFL play in with 18 tiebreaker determining who gets in and stuff like that. So
yeah, it could get interesting, definitely. Speaking of interesting, I wanted to talk about the next game, the Philadelphia Stars at the Birmingham Stallions. The best team in the North versus the best team in the South, which are ironically a rematch of the championship game in 2022. I complete with injuries to quarterbacks prior to it. So it was kind of interesting to see that we had Case Cookus versus Alex Magoo once again in this game. But it ended up being a very solid performance on both sides. And I predicted a Stars loss, but I think I expected Birmingham to have this game in hand early and then the Stars to close in. But this game turned out completely different than I expected, and I was very encouraged by the Stars' performance overall. Any thoughts, Michael?
This game was interesting to me because Case Cook has played lights out, in my opinion, in this game. I know he had some incompletions there, but a lot of those were drops. The one interception, I wouldn't necessarily put the full blame.
Mary. I wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't put a full on him, but the one thing that this did tell me as far as the Stars are concerned is the team is on a much better track than where they were when they kicked nothing but field goals for 3 weeks. So they have that figured out as far as their offense is concerned. Dexter Williams has been a nice little fit at the running back spot for all the injuries that they've had between, Darnell Holland being down and who was the other guy that went down just recently? I can't think of his name for some reason.
Matt Colburn.
Yeah, Colburn, and it's been nice to see Dexter get some run there. But the Stars are a team that look prime and ready to make another championship push, and that might be because the North is so rough, or whatever in general. But they could be a dangerous team now that Case has kind of figured this out again, and he's back on track. It was much better of a game than I thought it was, but they still have some major issues, Sam. Their tackles, they were talking about the one tackle on the left tackle there, something man. Damn, I can't think of his name, but he's like 6'9", big old dude. And they were like, oh, they brought him in and things have cleared up. And then on the very next play, he gave up a sack. So their tackles, like what started out as their interior offensive line being an issue, has now moved to their tackles. Their tackles have not been as quick out of the blocks and have been getting beat by some really good ends. And I think of Michigan Panthers, Breland Speaks, and the Pittsburgh pass rush as potentially giving them fits if it's one of those two teams in the playoffs. So in Philadelphia's interior D line is still an issue. Birmingham kind of ran the ball. Alex Magoo kind of had his way. Philadelphia has a lot of bright points, but they still have some of the same issues that they had that they need to kind of clean up a little bit. But if you're a Stars fan like you are, you should definitely be intrigued for sure.
Yeah, I'm happy about where we stand. Like I said, I didn't expect us to win this game. I expected it to be more of a Stallions. I don't want to say a blowout, but I expected the Stallions to have it in hand. I always expected the Stars to stay within one score. I just expected the Stallions to be ahead throughout the game and then it end within one score. But like I said, this game ended a lot better than I expected as a Stars fan, and I personally am excited to see the future of the next couple weeks because I think one of the problems in this game, and I'll get more into this in a minute because I want to ask Freddie's opinion, but it was the fact that we really only have the one option in the passing game that scares anybody. I mean, Corey Coleman obviously is going to attract a lot of attention no matter who you're playing, and a lot of times they were double teaming him, and the few times they didn't, that's when we were able to really produce those big plays, and that's when Corey Coleman scored a touchdown, and that's how we got off the scoring quick. Birmingham really quickly adapted to that, and it seemed like they started shutting down the big plays and focusing on Coleman more. And I think if we had another option, say Cyril Grayson, who's just signed, maybe he can take a little bit more attention away from Coleman, and it opens up this offense and hopefully the run game a little bit more. Freddie, what are your thoughts on that in the addition of Grayson?
So what's the question here?
What are your thoughts on the lack of how do I want to put this?
Star power.
Man, I don't even know how to word it at this point, but basically, like, what do you think it's going to take for the Stars offense to take the next step? Let's put it that way.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it helps them that they have 2 more games against North teams. I think they should. That I expect them to win out from here. And then the question is, what happens when they, if they go farther from there. I just don't know, honestly.
That's fair.
I'm happy to see Dexter Williams doing well as a Notre Dame fan, but I mean,
no, avoid that nightmare. Don't even.
Yeah, no Pierce.
I mean,
no Pierce.
You can sign him, but you just don't expect him to suit up and
his
play.
mouth. Just tape his mouth.
Well, I will say that maybe if he signs with the USFL, he can play a couple games for them and afford to pay his own players on his team. But, that's where I'll leave that. Pierce, what were your thoughts on this game? I mean, obviously you're a Stallions fan. Are you surprised how it ended up? Were you surprised that it took a last-minute drive by the Stallions, or was this a game that kind of ended how you expected?
Well, going off my prediction last week, I want to give kudos to Philadelphia because I wasn't expecting Philadelphia to be this good. I was like, Cookies is probably going to get a couple big, deep ones, but otherwise they weren't going to have this game. They played up. I kind of underestimated how well they were slowly getting things working on offense. I just think Stallions just pulled off a really clutch drive to win the game. It could have gone out for forever, I think, if there was just a bit more time on the clock. But Stallions it was really down to who had the ball last, and that was the Stallions. Like, the Stars definitely could have won this one. And, yeah, there is still some problems. I don't think they really have star power because, like you said, Coleman is kind of their only dude, and the running game is kind of hot and cold at the moment. And Cook is just cooking. I just think, I don't know what you can do on that front. But Stallion-wise, Magoo was obviously great. Like, he's, arguably the front runner for MVP right now. I want to give shout out to Davion Davis because he made a couple clutch catches in that game. CJ Marable's still going off hot. Just Sternberger still gets some couple good plays. And like defense is still pretty strong as it is. Like I just, Stallion's still playing good. I would have taken the loss considering how well both teams played, but we just got lucky with this one. And hopefully this win really helps us out getting a playoff spot next week.
I would say it goes a long way toward that for sure, especially at this point. Although their South teams win games as well. I was very encouraged by the offense's performance by Stallions as well. I really liked how they used their tight ends. It seemed like they got all three of them involved quite a bit, and that really plays into the way they like to do things. Obviously, we see them run that. I don't even know what to call it. Michael would know the name of the formation, but
T-bone?
is that like the wing T or the?
It has two names. We called it a full house, but it's a T-bone. That Pierce got it right. It is.
There you go.
It is a T-bone.
Okay, so the T-bone offense, where there's basically three backs in the backfield, and I believe they have a tight end as well, or is it two tight ends?
It depends. Sometimes you put one out there. On that that specific play you're talking about, I think they had two tight ends in the game.
Exactly. So they obviously like to go really big on their sets, and that plays into their run game, which obviously helps that too. But it was just I really liked the way they were able to get all these guys involved. I mean, you see Sternberger there. You see Matt Moss had a catch for 21 yards. You also see Petaway had a touchdown. So I think that was really awesome to see. And if they can continue to do that, there's not a lot of defenses that can really match up with those three guys, I don't think.
Well, it's tough. I mean, the tight end spot is is generally used as a mismatch, nightmare nowadays. And if you don't have the linebackers that, to be able to compete with them, the safety's going to probably end up being over aggressive and being too small to defend against, and the linebacker's going to probably end up getting burnt because they can't keep up with speed wise. So as long as you utilize them properly, I mean, we see it with Jay Sternberger. Every week he's burning a linebacker of some sort on a in route or whatever you want to call them, the Texas routes, and that's what happens. I mean, it's just the post routes get to them, and there's Sternberger in the end zone for 6.
Exactly. And unfortunately, that's going to be a hallmark of this Philadelphia defense until we can figure something out. I still say they need to go pursue their final draft pick and really get him here because he's the type of guy who can really fill in that role, cover tight ends, etc. He's that kind of hybrid, strong safety linebacker type. But moving on to the next game, we had the Memphis Showboats at the New Jersey Generals. This was a very, very ugly game. As you can look right here, we're looking at the play-by-play sheet for the drives: fumble, field goal, fumble, field goal. In the first quarter, it's 6-3. There's been a couple turnovers. You go into the second quarter, it doesn't get much better. Interception, punt, interception, missed field goal, end of half. It was just right back to it, interception, field goal. Into the third, 16-10. Getting a little bit better, I guess. And then in the fourth, that's when a little bit of scoring actually happened. You had 9 points by the Showboats, another 7 by the Generals. But ultimately, that ended up being it for the game, 25-16. Any surprises here for you, Freddie?
Really, I mean, like I mentioned at the top of the show, and like I mentioned going into this game in particular, I was paying attention to the time of possession. So if you could pull up a box, that'll help illustrate part of my point. I was talking about how the Generals are going in last in the league in time of possession, and it turned out that instead of regressing toward a better mean, they basically played into that same sort of identity. They just didn't have the ball as often, and I can't say that they necessarily would have done much better. It was just, yeah, as you said, it was kind of an ugly, sloppy game overall. And yeah, I mean, basically, I think there's decent parity within those divisions within, compared to, but not between the divisions. And I think we saw that this week. The Generals were kind of a team that I was thinking, maybe they can get a couple things right and they could be, in the playoffs. They could sneak into the playoffs as, 4-6, I think is what I was looking at. I was expecting them to lose this game, maybe closer than it being, but I'm really starting to feel that we're getting another Tank Bowl.
It's looking that way. It's sad to say. But it is really interesting to watch. But it seems like there's definitely a little bit of a lack of effort in the teams that are starting to lose games, and they know they're falling out of playoff contention. And I wonder how much of that has to do with the lack of win bonuses this season. And this is a point that Mike Mitchell has made, so it's nothing that not an original thought by me by any sort, but I was just kind of curious to see how that plays into these last few games. Pierce, what were your thoughts on this game?
Aside from that, it was probably the stinker of the week. Like, this was a hard game to watch. Luckily, I missed Kyle Loletta playing because apparently he was trash. I came in just as they started Pro Cup, and he threw a pick. But to be fair, after that, I don't think he did bad because he used his legs. But it was kind of just too little too late, and the turnovers killed them. That's probably why the time possession was so bad, because they kept turning the ball over, and they just never get down the field because of it. And aside from that, 6 field goals. 6. Stars are, eat your heart out, because that is 6 field goals. And Derek Dillon, he was, the main reason they were even that good on the field goals, because he kept returning up to the 50 almost every other time he returned the ball. He was kind of Mark Thompson for them. He was if it wasn't for him getting those give returns, I don't think the Showboats would have done so well. But since the good returns and all they had to get was maybe 20, 30 yards, that's not hard to beat. And the Generals were just disappointing in that matter. And then one thing I mentioned last week too was Darius Victor had to be a solid role for and encouraging for them to win. Darius Victor was quiet in this game. I don't really see him making any big splashes in this game at all, and it was disappointing. And also to me, that I kind of noticed, I don't know if it's just me, it's the wide receiver room isn't really there. I couldn't tell you who some of these guys were off the top of my head. I couldn't tell you. And it seemed I think they're the worst team in the league right now. Mike Riley, which is a huge regression, because they're obviously in for the conference championship last year, and they're bad. And it was just disappointing. And I needed them to win. As a Stallions fan, I needed them to beat them, because then it just helped us out in the long run. Disappointing. The one time I wanted the Generals to win, and they couldn't do that. So
that's fair. I wanted to welcome on our most recent guest. Let me rotate some things around here so you can actually see him. Jonathan Klink. He is a fellow writer from USFL News Hub. Thanks for joining us, Jonathan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's cool to be on here.
Absolutely. So what were your thoughts on this game? I mean, remind me which team you're covering.
I don't write for USFL News Hub. I just write for CFL News Hub for the Montreal Alouettes. But I've been to a few of the Michigan Panthers games because I live in Grand Rapids now. So I have been watching it.
Very nice, very nice. What were your thoughts on the Memphis Showboats game this past weekend?
Let me see here. I was happy to see Dakota Prukop back in for the Generals because I watching so much CFL. He was the third string quarterback in Winnipeg last year, so it's nice to see him back out there because he had the highest QBR on for New Jersey quarterbacks, but they just buried him on the practice squad for 3 or 4 weeks. So I was happy to see him back out there, and it was cool because I got to meet him when at one of the games in Ford Field where the Generals were there. I happened to catch him when he was heading to the locker room, so it's good to see
Very
him.
nice.
He's a good guy.
Very nice. Michael, what are your thoughts on this game?
New Jersey confuses the hell out of me. If you go back to that time of possession sheet real quick, if you take a look at those statistics read a completely different story. You know, they averaged over 5 yards a play, but they only had 44 plays, but they had 9 drives. So it's like it's an extremely confusing. You know, they were in the red zone twice and only had 2 touchdowns, whereas Memphis was in the red zone 5 times and had 1 touchdown. So the game is very weird. New Jersey, to me, is the worst team right now currently in the league, which is unfortunate because I do think Dakota Prukop makes them better. And I think that Prukop should have had his opportunity before they decided to go to Kyle Lauletta, who for everything that Kyle Lauletta is everything that he actually isn't still at the same time. And he's better off suited as a guy you spot start, not start 3 to 4 games. So I don't know. I just this Generals team looks very. I don't know. Prukop definitely is going to be, I think, the starter moving forward here. The lack of Darius Victor is confusing to me as well. I mean, he only had 9 attempts this week. I know that he had a miserable 2.9 yards per carry, but it just he deserves more than 9 attempts. I mean, they had 15 total attempts for the whole game, and Victor last year was running the ball 15 times by himself. So the lack of running game from New Jersey is horrible. Now Memphis, on the other hand, despite the 5-game win streak, this team has a lot of issues still. You know, not finishing drives. If it wasn't for their defense, that front four might be the best defensive front four in football right now, in the USFL right now. Primarily because they are the ones that are keeping them in games. And the secondary doesn't really have to do much of anything. The secondary can just sit back there and just be like, okay, well, we could pick this guy off because we could take a playoff because our edge guy got another sack or our edge guy put pressure on somebody. So it very possibly could be ball security issue for Victor too. It's the same thing with West Hills that we're seeing in New Orleans right now too. It's very possible it could be ball security issues, but I think that when you have 2 running backs like West Hills and Darius Victor, you still have to let that offense run through them. As good as Prukop is, he's still a rookie. You know, he's a rookie in the sense of American football. He's, you know, as far as the USFL is concerned. So you have to take the pressure off of him, and they're not doing that. And so that's where the issue's coming with New Jersey, and for Memphis, it's lack of finishing plays. I don't know, that offense doesn't match up with that defense. I mean, they had 71 plays, but they only averaged a little over 4 yards per play. So they have to clean that up if they're going to want to make the playoffs and make a push.
100%. And it is kind of interesting to see how the Generals have gone this season. I mean, last year and most of this year so far, they've been one of the top rushing offenses. And all of a sudden, as of late, they've fallen off dramatically. I mean, I think it's dropped almost 10 yards per game average in the last 2 weeks alone, if not more. And it's crazy to see. I don't know why they're going that route. Is Trey Williams hurt right now? Does anybody know?
Yeah, Trey Williams hasn't played all year, I don't think.
I feel like he was in there for a bit.
Or he played for a week. He was inactive?
He was inactive for this week. I don't know about the rest.
Gotcha. I know I have him on my fantasy team, or I had him on my fantasy team, and he was inactive for like the first 2 weeks, and then came back, I think, for week 3, but got hurt, and then was inactive
Gotcha.
again, I think, maybe.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Best Man Cave Award. Who does it go to, Chris? Let us know.
Oh, it's going to Jonathan. Look at all that.
Yeah,
Look at all that hockey gear
100%.
back there.
Yeah.
Look at all that gear back there. Definitely.
Yeah, mine doesn't really compare. That's for sure. That's pretty awesome. I do like that.
Mine's just a curtain and this little flipsy thing that my daughter has.
I finally got the jerseys up a few days ago. I just hung them all up because we bought this house about a year ago, and there was no drywall in this room. So I finally got it decorated just for you, Sam.
Nice. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're
So
welcome.
thoughtful. First appearance
sweet
on the
of you.
show, already making me blush. I love it.
Yeah.
So let's go to a game that you hopefully paid, or you were paying a little bit closer attention to, given that you're saying you're a Panthers fan. How did you feel about this game?
This was a weird game. It felt like at different times both teams were trying to lose because you had those weird interceptions by McLeod Bethel Thompson. He threw the one to his running back, like above his helmet. It was just an awkward throw, so it got tipped and then picked off. And then he had that other one for a veteran quarterback. You hate to see he tried to read to his left, and then he did a horrible read back to his right and just threw it right to the defense. And he just kept giving us the ball. And going into that game, I was kind of a fan of both teams because watching McLeod Bethel Thompson in the CFL, I want him to succeed in the USFL. And so it's just a weird game to watch because I wanted the Panthers to win. I wanted McLeod to play well. And it was like both teams at times were just trying to lose the game. And the Panthers offense, they had a decent amount of passing yards that game, but it felt very stagnant. At times it just wasn't passing the eye test.
100%. I mean, it completely reflects that on the scoreboard as it just kind of slowly creeps up to 20 points. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Michael, what were your thoughts on this game?
Don't get me started.
Oh,
God, don't get me started. So after a dreadful first quarter between both teams, the second quarter looked like it was really fantastic for New Orleans. It was off to a great start, up 21-0. Things look great. And then in the last 2.5 minutes, it was just kidding. LOL. So we go into the half at 21-10, all the momentum's on Michigan's side, and then we come out and put up 3 points. 3 friggin' points, Sam, in the entire second half of the entire game for the rest of the game. Luckily, our defense bailed us out, or Michigan's offense was just that bad. Either or.
I think a little bit of the second.
Either or. Maybe both. Who knows? It could have been both. But
a little bit of both. New Orleans was trying to help them. They kept giving them the ball just outside the red zone.
It's just like Johnny Dixon is a stud, Braden. I completely agree with you. He is a stud. But when you're up 21-0, you look like you're fixing all the mistakes from the last 3-week skid that you have had. And you're going to that. I don't know. It looked like it was back to the old style, and all of a sudden it was the second half was back to the 3-week losing streak. And I don't know what it was this time, because it's not like Michigan ran a lot of long drives on us, because they didn't. So I as a Breakers fan, it's painful. I think I'm surprised I'm not just all white with the hair and everything right now, because I was so just like getting ready to throw my TV out the window.
Check it out. We have one more special guest that I need to introduce. What's up, Mark? How's it going, man?
Holy
What's
shit.
good?
Oh,
Got out.
look at
Wasn't
this.
expecting
Mark
you to be
is
able
here.
to join us. Appreciate
Hey,
it.
Mark, listen to this, buddy. So I mentioned last week that you need an intro video, and sure enough, Sam has been working on it. I don't know if he got it done or not, but he got one done. Yeah, or he was working on one. I don't know if he got it done or not, but yeah.
That's
You're
right.
muted,
I haven't
Sam,
even
so-
looked at the slate.
So
I mentioned
we're
it last
getting
week. But
Yo, I had
It's not
to
the
come on for
special,
the Breakers' first win of my fanhood
Of your-
career.
Love
oh boy, yeah. I
it.
mean,
Man, I might have to add that to the promo somehow.
the first win of his
Ho
fan
ho
career.
Hogan.
Oh.
but it was not pretty.
No, the second half was
whatsoever.
dreadful.
I didn't even finish
It
the
was
game.
horrible.
It was pretty bad. But now that you're here, we can go ahead and get your take on the game. Obviously, you were not a fan of how it progressed for the Breakers. What were your thoughts overall?
Oh man, I mean, I think you guys probably already summed it up. It started off very well for them, and then they fell flat on their faces. I was actually kind of surprised. It seemed like they did a lot better against the run than I thought they were going to do. So that was encouraging, but then it's like the secondary took a step back and made Josh Love look like a, potentially NFL backup, which he's not. Sorry, Josh Love. Not trying to rip you there, but you just don't belong, man. So I don't know. I think at the end of the day, they got the job done, and they hadn't done that in the past 3 weeks. So you have to look at that as a positive, a step forward, and they can build on that from there. So there is a silver lining. At the end of the day, they did win. So I think they're trending in the right direction now.
I would definitely agree. Quick update for all you indoor football fans in the house. Currently, the Billings Outlaws lead 19-7, 18 seconds left to go before halftime. Looking pretty good for Billings so far. They did just miss the conversion attempt, though. So we'll see how things go. Maybe Sioux City is able to put some more points on the board and even it up before half. It's going to be interesting. Interesting game so far. Chris says Cookus can take a lot of pain like that Mohawk guy from Road Warrior, which is an actual documentary of Australia. Love won Player of the Week 3 times. Who did he play in those games is the question. That is
the week before the last, and I think in that one, Joe Walker really should have gotten it.
I can't believe Joe Walker wasn't
got
even.
that one.
I can't believe Joe Walker wasn't even nominated.
He wasn't. I think they have to choose one for per team, and I chose Love over Walker, which that was BS. And I think one of them was back when Michigan was going really hot for the first couple of games. So I think it's a bit Mickey Mouse.
Pierce, Chris says trade Love for Magoo.
No.
Not a fan of that idea?
No. You can have Kyle Slaughter though. He's just sitting, keeping the bench warm. You can take him.
Just give him Slaughter for free.
Do it, please. I don't know why we still have him.
That's completely fair. Anyone else got any last minute thoughts about the Breakers and man, I'm blanking the name now. The Breakers game this week. Panthers. Thank you.
I thought it was interesting that after this, it's no more North versus South, and apparently, the ultimate record South versus North was 13-3, and the Stallions beat the entire division. That means the North has only beat the South 3 times this season. That is ridiculous.
And I think 2 of those were against the Breakers.
2 of them were in week 1.
Interesting. That's very interesting.
It was
after Mark announced his fandom.
Panthers over Gamblers, Stars over Showboats both in week 1, and the Stars over the Breakers in week 6.
Slaughter was the starting quarterback of the Breakers last year.
Yeah.
Sorry, continue, Freddie.
Yeah, my thoughts are, I guess, and also going back to the Stars and Stallions, because I didn't get to really weigh in on that game overall. I think the close results of both of those are kind of speaking to the parity in the league, and that even though there is sort of that north-south divide, there isn't really too much separation, or there's not really that much of a stratification, as opposed to the CIF, where almost every game, the team that you expect is going to win going in ends up winning. There's maybe a couple exceptions based on if I looked at my ratings right now for that. not too many teams are winning games that you wouldn't expect. Whereas this is almost the USFL this year is almost going in the opposite direction. Like the Stallions right now, I don't have them as my highest rated team. I don't have them in my top 2, even though they have the best record right now. And I think they might still be the most complete team, but I think it's just speaking to there are some pretty thin margins here that everyone's operating on. But going to the game that we're getting into right now, the Breakers, I think, even though they ended up winning, they ended up breaking the streak. It still kind of speaks to my general not that impressed with MBT. And I was kind of beating that drum before the season began. Everyone was hyped up on, the reigning Grey Cup champion quarterback is coming down to the USFL to play. And I was like, oh, hold on, pump the brakes. He's never really had an especially impressive season on an individual basis in the CFL. And then he had a couple good games early on when he came in with, more poise than most of these guys are coming in with and more experience under pressure. And he did pretty well. And then, I guess teams kind of honed in on what he was doing well, and they've been able to mostly neutralize it since then. And that's why, among other things, the Breakers, I would imagine the Breakers are a lot of people's least likely team from the South to make the playoffs at this point.
I got the Breakers winning it all this year.
Don't make that bet yet. Give it a week or two.
And
I think McLeod is going to have a bounce back.
Don't put all your eggs in the basket there.
You got to make the bet right now. Best time to make it. The odds are the best. It's going to happen, man. This is the beginning.
But is it going to actually happen?
Okay, well, I will clip this, and we will definitely give you your credit if that happens for sure.
Chris Orr down the stretch.
One of the things that I wanted
I think I'm going to second that. I think Breakers for the championship as well. I think McLeod's going to have a bounce back because he was on fire at first. And the last few weeks, I don't know if defense has adjusted to him or if he's just been less focused due to his success. Because some of those picks he threw, it just seemed almost like you're not paying 100% attention to what the defense is doing. So I think he's going to refocus and have a bounce back.
I've heard some people, I think it was Pat this morning, mention potential fatigue given the when the CFL season ends and when the USFL training camp starts. Anybody think that that's potentially a factor from McLeod?
Yeah, why not? He gets a little bit of a break there from November to April, but he's in camp in March. So, yeah, I don't see why not. It's not a huge drive. Then he moved from Canada to relocated from Canada to back to the States. So it's possible.
Definitely. I just think his protection has been kind of rough recent. Like he's been under pressure a lot this year. And
somehow still leads the league in passing.
Yeah, so I think they're managing it. They're finding a way, and they even, at the end of the day, Breland Speaks is, there's that comment there, and Chris made it. Breland Speaks, offense listens. That's a great comp there, because at the end of the day, he dominates every single one of these games. So the fact that they were able to hold him off to the degree that they did, which they really didn't. He still had a pretty solid game. I think it says something about them being able to kind of turn the page on that. And this might have been that wake-up game to realize, hey, we can hold our own against the best in the league when it comes to the pass rush. I think that's the difference for them.
That's completely fair. So one of the things I wanted to do in today's episode is kind of update where some of these players stand in terms of records as far as last season goes. So last season, the passing yard record for the league was set by Jordan Teamu, 2,014 yards. And he also set the touchdown record at a very low 14. So looking at the 2023 passers, McLeod Bethel Thompson has set the new passing yard record. Alex Magoo currently stands with the new record for passing touchdowns with 16. He looks like he's probably going to top or at least hit 20. McLeod Bethel Thompson's likely going to top 2,500 yards passing or pretty damn close. I expect Case Cookus and Alex Magoo to also top the passing yard record from last season. Looking at a couple other things, Wes Hills is already over the rushing yard total from last year. I believe he's just 20, 30 yards over from last season. So he's already over. Mark Thompson's nearing that mark. The mark was set by Jordan Ellis last season, another Breakers running back. He had 597 yards for the season. Adam Rodriguez currently stands with the most sacks by any one player in the USFL so far. He's got 14 between last season and this year, just barely topped Chris Odom. We have Breland Speaks is nearing up on Adams' stats from last season, but he's not quite where Odom was at last year, so I don't think he's going to top his record. And then receiving statistics wise, Corey Coleman will likely pass Cavante Turpin in passing yards this upcoming week. Turpin had 540 last season, led the league. Sorry about that. And currently Coleman has 515 for the season. So 25 more yards he'll pass Turpin's total from last year. So any surprises on that list for you guys? Or is it pretty much exactly where we expected it to be in terms of passing and specifically receiving yards? Coleman was probably a name a lot of people pegged for receiving yard leader.
No, I mean, for me, not really. I kind of expected several of those names to be there, and I guess I'm just more curious as to where Bo Scarborough would be if he was healthy. Like that's just one of my where would he be on this list right now? Because at the end of the year last year, he was looking like he was going to be unstoppable. So, but yeah, no, there's not really any surprises on that list.
That's completely fair. I definitely am not surprised to see MBT at the top of the passing yard list. I'm a little surprised to see Alex Magoo only because I don't think I saw the injury for Jamar Smith coming. Case Cookish, not a surprise at all, even though he's been sacked left and right all year long. They've kind of solidified that offensive line the past couple of weeks, so he's been able to steady the passing game for him. This past week was huge. Wes Hills kind of came out of left field. I did not think he was ultimately going to be this big a part of the offense. But other than that, yeah, it's been pretty standard stuff in terms of who's leading the league currently.
I guess I'm not as surprised with Wes Hills only because I expected whoever the Breakers back to be to kind of be in this position, regardless if it was Anthony Jones or him. And I don't know if Anthony Jones' skill set's that much different than Wes Hills, to be honest with you. So I think that's probably the reason why I'm not as surprised with him. But you're right, he did kind of come out of left field because I think everybody was kind of expecting Anthony Jones to have that backfield.
Absolutely. So one more thing that we were going to talk about this week is some NFL players, some USFL players that deserve NFL deals. So off the top of your guys' head, I know I'm not, a couple of these guys are not prepared for this because I didn't tell them ahead of time. Let's go to Pierce first. Pierce, who do you think deserves an NFL contract as things stand currently? You don't have to give us like any one position, just a couple players off the top of your head.
I'm gonna try to name some that aren't obvious. I think one that would be very easy would be Davion Davis. We just picked him up off of practice squad, like he was just cut when we picked him up, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans pick him back up after the year. So I think he did because he's definitely been good. Deion Kane, same deal. He was just like off of practice squad. I think Eagles maybe. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's off that. Jay Sternberger is another one. Justin Hall, he's a bit of an under the radar pick. I would not be surprised if he gets picked up. I think another sneaky one would probably be Warner from Showboats, the defensive back. He played a pretty strong game. I don't know how well he's been all season, but I saw him and I'm like, he could definitely be like a good special teamer in the NFL.
Magoo?
Magoo, I see him definitely going in there. Go to the Cowboys. I'll take him over Cooper Rush any day. So
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, I could see him competing for a spot. I feel like he's a little behind the 8 ball just because of the NFL cycle, but I guess we'll see how things go. Let's go to Michael next. I know you had some time to prepare for this. What are your thoughts?
Johnny Dixon. I mean, I don't know if that's one of the obvious ones or not, but Johnny Dixon, the injury happened. He came back and he's changed that offense completely for them. Sage Surratt, obviously, with the Breakers as well, is kind of a gimme, to get an opportunity and chance. I'm going to say, Cam Eccles-Looper. I know he's been quiet the last few weeks, but I think overall he's shown a little bit of his versatility when it's come to his ability to play special teams and be successful there. And I think that goes, a long way with with the NFL. And then Breland Speaks is a guy that I don't think should have ever been playing in the USFL, if you want my honest opinion. He should be in a rotational spot at the NFL. He's not a stud on the point where he's going to be a guy who's going to go in and set the sack record or anything at the NFL level, but he absolutely should be rotating, for sure at that edge position. And really, you could pluck in any handful of linebackers at this point. Just because the linebacker spots in the NFL are always a good rotational spot, and a lot of those guys fill in on special teams, whether it's the punt or, kickoff, well, the kickoff doesn't exist in the NFL anymore, but for punt and field goals, for sure. So, but those would be the primary guys that stick out that aren't necessarily give-me's, but also at the same time that are kind of gimmies as well. So.
That's fair. Freddie, do you have any guys that you see in the NFL for sure?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of the ones who didn't have time to prepare for this. But I just kind of going off Pierce, I would also say Magoo, partly because we're not totally sure what's going to happen with Jamar Smith. I know he's tweeted out some mysterious tweets lately about his future, but if it ends up seeming like he'll come back to the Stallions, that kind of the window starts closing for Magoo to, cash in on this high level performance that he's putting in. So why not at least give it a try? And then, if you end up coming back, you could maybe try something else. Maybe, see if you could end up on another team. There are a few kickers and punters out there that might deserve a shot on some NFL squads. Brock Miller. There's a few kickers. Skiba, Aubrey, Coughlin all stand out to me. But as you said, the timing of the USFL season kind of affects how these guys will cycle in for the NFL. They won't be coming in like totally at the end of camp, but camp will be, decently underway by the time these guys are able to go in. And so, I don't necessarily expect these guys to go in and sign right away, but these guys, these kickers and punters might, at least be on the table if a team is struggling and they need to sign someone early, mid-season. I wish I would have had more time to prepare on this one, but that's what I could get on short notice.
That's good for short notice.
That's
I
completely
do
fair.
want to. I do want to echo real quick that the camp, the thing that sucks about this is there's going to be a lot of these players that are going to get invites, and they deserve the invites, but there's no mini camps anymore at this point. You know, they're well into the off-season program, you know, by the time this season ends, or, you know, whatever. I mean, we're 2 weeks in before the end of the regular season, and I think that their true training camp starts like maybe a week later for a lot of teams, like maybe 2 weeks later, and so it's not a ton of time to go through. So there'll be a ton of invites, but a lot of these workouts are going to end up being just workouts, and maybe a signing later on down the road that actually stick. Because what was it, Sam? You said there was about 100 players last year that got invites, but it was only like 13 that officially signed, and there was only like 8 that actually stuck for the whole year.
The number of
Something like
signings
that.
was way higher than that. It was
No, I meant at the end of the cuts. It was only like 13 that made it at the end of the cuts, and then there was only like 8 for the whole year that made it all the way through for the whole year.
I don't recall how many made it through the entire year, but 13 seems accurate for the active rosters and practice squads.
Yeah, and then you got to figure the invites probably aren't going to be nearly as high because of the XFL.
Right.
Yeah,
So,
and that's one of my questions. One of my big questions that I'll be focused on over the next couple seasons, or however long these leagues coexist, is how much does that time window affect people? Because if it does dramatically, like we really think it does, then, you know, maybe we see the top end talent filter up to the XFL.
It would be kind of nice with the USFL timing a season the way it does if they could find it in them to. I mean, maybe they'd have to move things around, but if they could time it so that like halfway through the regular season, there's a bye week for everyone where it's timed so that it's mostly like right at the time of mini camps. And so players who maybe are doing well through 5 weeks can, you know, be excused to go try out for NFL teams that are interested. I'm not sure, you know, if that's something that they'd look into. It kind of depends on what their stance is on.
It's an interesting prospect. It just, with as small as these rosters are, and then the game day rosters on top of that. I don't know why the game day rosters are so small. I think if any of those guys were to go to those mini camps and then get a chance to sign on, unless the USFL didn't allow them to do that per se, and it was more of like a futures contract type stuff, then I don't think. I think it would be very hard for the USFL to be able to find a ton of guys on a whim to replace in that short period of time. You know what I mean? Like, I think the USFL definitely has eyes on guys that didn't make teams or whatever, but the CFL season is right around the corner. The ELF is starting to really pick up steam, so the options are there for these guys if it doesn't work with the USFL. So I don't know, man. That it's an intriguing prospect, but I just don't know if the USFL would be able to make that work.
Yeah.
I think it would have a really negative effect on the fan interest. If you had a lot of the big stars take off from the USFL, I think that'd have a really negative effect on the league itself.
I would agree wholeheartedly.
I could see that.
Jonathan, let's go to you next. Sorry, Freddie. What were you saying?
Oh no, I was just gonna say. I guess it kind of depends on, you know, if all of the stars were really truly willing to jump ship from something that was looking good right now, versus, you know, for in order to get an NFL tryout. I'm not sure. It's an interesting prospect, but there is a lot to consider there.
100%. Jonathan, any guys that stick out to you in the USFL so far that deserve NFL contracts?
I've been really impressed with Joe Walker to stick out as a star, as a receiver, when the passing game is not passing the eye test for so many games on a stretch. And he's consistently stood out. So I've been really impressed with him. And then Frank Ginda on the defensive side, Of course, Speaks is awesome and he should be in the NFL, but Frank Ginda too, he is everywhere. And watching it live too, getting to sit so close down to the field as you do at the USFL games, he is just everywhere on the defense. There's a reason he's second in tackles, and then he's got 3 interceptions to add to that. So I think Ginda and Speaks both belong in the NFL.
I would say great assessments on both. I would totally agree with that. Mark, any players to stick out to you?
Well, I think that Trey Quinn is a handy player, and he's balled out this season. We've seen him be useful in the NFL before, and he's kind of another one of those head scratchers that I think he definitely deserves another shot as a slot guy. Like I could totally see Trey Quinn on like Thanksgiving playing for the Lions for some reason. I don't know why that makes sense, but for some reason that makes sense to me. So who knows? He might be a fantasy sleeper for us come week 14 or whatever that is in the NFL. Alonzo Moore, he works the sideline really well. He's probably the best guy when it comes to working the sideline and moving the chains. He has red zone ability too, so I could see him making an impact. And on the defensive side of the ball, Mark Gilbert, I do think he's been pretty dominant all season long. He's been quite the force. He's still a pretty young player. So, I think the biggest thing about the USFL is like, you brought up a great point. The XFL almost is positioned with the way that its season is lined up and the timeline that you're going to get a lot more of the high upside, like higher potential type of players. Where the USFL, you might have some more of the journeyman type of project players, guys that are maybe working their last shot just to make a practice squad and, get a few extra years, playing football. So I do think there's a little bit of that given the timelines, which I have some concern about players then, migrating more towards the XFL in the long term. But I don't think it's going to really matter because I think the two leagues are going to merge in like 3 or 4 years anyways.
I hope not.
I think it will. Honestly, I don't think we're going to have 2 seasons like this. I think all the players, that's going to be their biggest request with the USFL is to start earlier anyways. So I think we're going to see a merger. Or one by the other out.
I mean,
it wouldn't be the worst business practice if you moved one of the Houston teams, but that's a big purchase. It's a big purchase.
I don't know if it's. I just don't know if it's going to happen. I mean, obviously, there's always the possibility that it could. Both leagues, I think, they both have a purpose in the timeline of what they do, and I think they both have an impact on what they do. It's hard because it's like you said, 2 spring leagues running like that. It doesn't feel like it's feasible to be able to both succeed, but I think they both can succeed. That's the thing, is I really do, as long as they don't overlap their scheduling much more. The only thing that's going to be interesting to watch is when they start expanding. Because which direction does the schedule go then? That's going to be the question. Because if they expand to 16 teams, you would have to merge at that point. Like you would or a buyout would have to happen, or one of the leagues is going to end up folding at that point.
Right. So. Yeah, that's the thing though. I don't think it expands to 16. I think they merge and they go to like 12 and they extend the league or the season 2 weeks and just keep on the XFL timeline.
It would just have. I mean that. With the money that Fox has behind this, it would just have to be. They would have to be doing really, really poorly. I think to even consider it. I don't know though. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before. I mean, it won't be the first time I've eaten crow.
Did you guys see all the personnel changes in the XFL?
Yeah. A lot of that was just ticket stuff, though, right?
Teams? Well, look who you're talking to. That's exactly what Mark did for a living for a while there. So, Mark, I mean, why don't you kind of weigh in on that? Is that something that we should worry about, or is that more the XFL's reaction to what they saw produced by that ticket sales department last
No,
season.
I mean, and I don't mean to be like harsh because we are talking about people's livelihoods and people's jobs, and like there are definitely people out there, like especially ticket sales reps that lost their jobs. But to put it bluntly, they're trimming the fat, and I think it's the right move. Like it felt like there were people doing jobs and you didn't really know what they were doing. like and I think they might have just found bodies and didn't really take the time to find actual talent. And again, that's no disrespect to anyone that may have lost their jobs because I don't like to generalize because I don't think you can say that about every single one. And I'm not going to name any, single person here, but I think there were definitely some situations and some scenarios across the league where you were like, what are they doing? And I think it was just people who got the job and they were excited to be a part of it, but didn't have the experience or the background to know what they were supposed to be doing, or didn't have leadership properly telling them, or leadership knowing what they were doing themselves. So, I mean, we saw it. Like it wasn't just entry level folks, but there were some higher ups that the league moved on from as well. And so they did a full not investigation, but an examination of where they could trim the fat, mainly because they want to be more efficient with the money that they're spending. I don't think it's a matter of necessarily like the concept of like running out of money by any means. I think it's just being smart with your business and not letting things snowball.
Well, let's put it this way. I mean, if you look at it from a grand scheme of things, if they did a performance evaluation and they look at their numbers and they're like, hey, this is what we projected versus how much money we're spending, and we fell short of our projections, cuts are to be expected, right? And we may have gotten the sugar-coated version of what their projections were for those attendance numbers, because I know that they said, if we get 8,000, we'll be happy. But there was a lot of places where, like Vegas, that they never really topped 60% capacity and stuff like that. And I kind of wonder what they expected out of cities like that, or if they expected more out of cities like St. Louis or, maybe Houston, stuff like that. So, I mean, it's definitely interesting to see, but I don't think it's something to be worried about in the slightest form.
I did like from a ticket sales perspective, they didn't, even the weak locations could have done better. It's kind of a cop out when you say that, one location didn't do well because of like this city and there's this, that, and the other going on in this city. Nah, man, everyone can go out there and hustle and hit the phones and grind. Like to a certain degree, from a ticket sales standpoint, you can get the numbers up to at least some sort of floor. And again, Vegas, that was one spot that it was very apparent there was nothing going on there. So
from a business standpoint, and Freddie, I know you want to say something real quick, but just from a business standpoint, in my experience with business, if you're not evaluating your business every year in any capacity, then you're never going to succeed, because you have to find a way to adjust and you have to find a way to grow. And what's the best way to do that than evaluate where you are? And I don't know about you guys, but I think the Texas teams are the teams that are kind of underperformed, in my opinion, more than it was necessarily, with the exception of maybe San Antonio, because San Antonio, I mean, if their team was better, I think that we would have seen an increase over the time. Just because the team wasn't really that good across the board, we didn't really see a huge increase. But the Texas teams overall, I felt were probably the three most disappointing teams out of everybody that was there. I kind of expected that from Orlando to start, just because they got burned so much with the AAF. But I think Orlando's will eventually grow a little bit, because I think there is a market there in Orlando.
I think Orlando has a good group there too.
Yeah.
The front office.
So it's just, I just felt the Texas teams were a little bit kind of the underwhelming of the teams personally, in my opinion there.
I 150% agree. In fact, I expected Houston to be way better off. San Antonio, I thought, was pretty solid. I think Mark alluded to it on one of the previous episodes, and he's the whole reason I even know this. But they pooled efforts for the championship, so the championship numbers are kind of skewed when you really look at them. Yes, San Antonio was a big part of that attendance, I imagine, but a lot of those fans were coming from other fan bases as well. So I definitely think that's a factor there. But I think you're on the money there when you say the Houston's, or not Houston in particular, but the Texas teams are where a lot of that disappointment lies. Any more thoughts, Freddie? I know you added something.
Well, I don't know how we're doing on time. I don't know if we need to keep this tight. But I was just going to say, I don't really see a merger happening in like a true sense. It kind of feels to me that the XFL and the USFL are kind of coming at the same thinking that has brought about like every major corporation having their own streaming service now. And, different, Disney Plus and Max and all those things. But, we could see something that for fans and for players at least functions as a merger where one of these leagues fails, or I guess I think in order for a true merger to happen, you'd probably have to have both leagues in a pretty bad spot and looking to, kind of salvage each other in order to stay afloat. And I mean, you can maybe end up with like a 12-team league to start out. I guess it would function as a merger for most people, but I guess I don't really see these guys coming together if things are going just fine to start. That was all.
I feel like a 16-team league could be successful.
Eventually, I think.
Because all the fans of the USFL, they would be drawn to watch the teams in the XFL if they were competitors in the other conference. So I think all of the TV numbers would actually go up.
I didn't mean to say that I don't think 16 teams can't work eventually. I'm just saying if they were to go from 2 8-team leagues to one single league, I think maybe cutting down on the number of teams to start might be the move initially.
I disagree though, because like you really have to have the revenue to support it, and you're not getting the revenue from a broadcasting standpoint with 16 teams. So it's hard to find 16 places. I think it's a very I don't know. I just think that I don't see how that can work, quite honestly. That's too many teams.
I think 16 is probably the max. I mean, if you just think about it from a TV standpoint alone, I think with Fox having the support, of just basically being a, broadcasting company in general, it kind of helps things. I mean, NBC Universal gives them a good chunk of money to show games as well. So, I don't know. I think 16 would be the max. I don't think you could go further though. And I don't know if I know the USFL and XFL are talking about expansion themselves internally, but it's going to be real hanky if both these leagues try to go to 12 teams. It's going to be really kind of.
Isn't that kind of a testament to the high interest from the broadcast standpoint of what the networks want if both individual leagues are looking to expand, though?
Well, the broadcast standpoints, from what I understand, the first year for the USFL, they're really happy. From the second year, I've heard reports they're not so happy internally with with the overall numbers. But I think a good chunk of that is because they don't really have a set streaming device. Like they have 2 stations that are showing games, and one you can stream, the other one you can't really stream because they don't have an app without a cable provider type of situation. Whereas the XFL, I think, was pretty happy with their overall ESPN numbers. They didn't release the streaming numbers, which Disney doesn't really do in general anyways. But a good chunk of these revenues is going to come from TV to start off with. You know, I mean, it's just the way that these leagues are going to work. And I don't know what's going to happen after year 3, but I mentioned to Sam that if the USFL survives year 3, I don't think it's going to go away.
So. I would agree. On that note, let's go ahead and move into our favorite segment.
That don't impress me much.
I was curious how you were going to get the graphic there for the entire North Conference of the USFL. You just picked the logos. That's cool too. It just this year or this week, I chose the entire North Division. They got swept by the Southern Division in the XFL. It wasn't without a couple tough games, in the North, you know, showcase that their teams, you know, are tough, but you had a chance. You had a chance to show that this talk about the overall, you know, South being stronger and everything, to kind of put that to rest, and you came up short in every single matchup, in close matchups as a whole. I will say though that the South only won 3 games by a combined total of, I think it was 8 points. So it wasn't without, you know, strong performances, but a couple of those games the North should have won and they did not, and because of that don't impress me much, North Division.
That don't impress me much.
I thought that was a good one this week. So, Freddie, you got to get out of here. Thank you so much for joining us, man. I really appreciated you lending us an hour and a half of your time. We'll be wrapping it up here shortly, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Freddie. Tagline out.
It looks like he's frozen, but if you haven't checked it out yet, make sure to go check out his podcast on Spotify, Freddie Stat Go. He is based primarily on the Fan Control Football League. It was with Kyle Sheridan, also another XFL News Hub writer, so definitely check that out. So, Mark, do you have any DFS players for us this week?
Well, I can certainly do this off the cuff here. I think I could go through and give you a couple. So, starting with quarterbacks, I got Alex Magoo here. Alex Magoo, he is pricey. He's the obvious play, but he's also got the Houston defense, a historically bad defense in the USFL. I know we're not talking about a lot of history here, but they absolutely suck this year in the air. So I'll go ahead and run with Alex Magoo. Also, I know that the Memphis secondary is actually very quietly giving up a lot of passing yards. So Mikhail Bethel-Thompson is certainly in play at 11,400. What happens with Dakota Prukop if we think he's going to start again? I do like him against the Philly defense, especially at his price point at 8,300. I don't know what's going to happen with that, though, so I'm not overly excited. This is me kind of thinking out loud. I will also point out Wes Hills. He's still got a lot of work and he's very expensive, but I think people are going to be coming off of him given his kind of disappointing weeks versus his price point. I will also go with Darius Victor at 7,800. His price point is fair. He's been playing well ever since that week where he had the 3 fumbles. So I'll run with Darius Victor. Kareth White still priced down at $6,700, so I think he's an interesting play against New Orleans. However, I do think New Orleans is on the upswing, so be careful with that. That's probably it for running backs. As far as receivers, I don't really like spending up, but I do think Justin Hall, a lot of people are going to be off him at this point. I think we're going to see single-digit ownership, and his price point is still up there, but I do believe he can get it done against this Birmingham secondary. Couple other receivers, I do think. Well, I'll go with the tight end. Jay Sternberger is back. He's $8,100, so he's not overly costly. Trey Quinn at $7,100 against Pittsburgh. That's still a good price point for Trey Quinn, a guy who's probably going to get you at least 4 or 5 balls, and he's seen the touchdown, the end zone. I want to say 3 out of 4 weeks or something like that. Probably a couple value plays out there, but I don't know any off the top of my head. Oh, one value play that I'm thinking of that I think we could get with here at tight end is Matt Siebert. He had a touchdown called back, and if he didn't have that touchdown called back, he'd probably be priced up an extra $1,000. So he's min salary at $2,500, and he's been actively involved in this offense for the past 3 weeks now, proving as a very helpful player here for Pittsburgh. So really like Matt Siebert at $2,500.
Did Helm score his 6 points last week?
Helm score is 6 points.
Yeah, you said last week that Daniel Helm was a tight end that you, or was it last week? Yeah, he was a tight end you liked.
Good point. Yeah, he did get his 2 catches for 24 yards, so he had 4.4 fantasy points, and the week before he had 7.2. But he was also $2,500. So
yeah,
pretty cheap play, I would imagine. So yeah, all right. I think we've pretty much covered all the topics that I wanted to cover. Is there any news that anything like that you guys want to get to before we do predictions and close it up for the night?
I do want to drop in. I don't know how many of you guys watch Tom Grossi, but he's currently doing a huge thing, 30 and 30, where he's going to 30 of the football NFL stadiums in 30 days, raising money for St. Jude. He's currently going to go to, I believe, New York tomorrow. He just came off Gillette Stadium. So if you guys just go check out Tom Grossi's work, I'm pretty sure he has the link for St. Jude if you guys want to donate. I think he's over 86K, and he's been going for almost a week now. So if you guys want to help out with that cause, that'd be cool.
That's awesome. Good for him. I mean, he's always doing awesome stuff, but that's particularly cool of him. Okay, let's go ahead and get into predictions here. Let me rotate some stuff around so you can see Pierce there. Let's go ahead and start with Jonathan, and let's start with the first game of the week. I mean, we got Michigan Panthers at the Pittsburgh Maulers. What are your thoughts on this game, sir?
As much as I've been negative about the Panthers, I think they are going to come back and win this game. So I'm just not afraid of Pittsburgh. And I think the Panthers defense is going to stand up and do a good job. And the Panthers offense is going to be good enough.
That's completely fair. I normally ask everybody for score predictions, but if you don't have them, that's perfectly okay.
It's going to be low scoring, 20-10.
Okay, I like it. Let's go to Mark next. Mark, what are your thoughts on this game?
I think this is going to be a really good game, but I will take Michigan, and I will go 23-17 Michigan.
All right, interesting. We got 2 picks for Michigan so far. Let's go to Pierce next. What are your thoughts on this game?
This is a good one. I really didn't think so because, like I said, that Mahler's offense could be really good, and the Panthers sporadic. They could be really, really good, just like love throwing it, or they could be bad. But I just think at this point in the road, the Maulers aren't gonna get the game done. I still think it's gonna be close. So I'm going for Michigan 20-17.
All right. Got Michigan again, and we got 2 people picking 20 and 2 people picking 17 for Michigan and Pittsburgh in particular. Very interesting. Michael, what are your picks for this one?
This one pains me because I would like for Michigan to win, but they are not going to. This is going to be the Maulers finally finding a way to finish out. I think that they are one of the teams that has a losing record that is still going out there and trying to ball out as hard as they can. Troy Williams is really coming into his own, and I think they moved to Madre, London to kind of shore up their running game a little bit better this week. And I think Pittsburgh is going to eke out the win 24-20 in a very close game.
Okay, that's very fair. I was actually going to go with Pittsburgh as well. I'm kind of surprised to see everybody picking Michigan. I get why you're doing it. I know they've been very good on the road so far this season. But I personally think Pittsburgh's going to have what it takes. I really am a big fan of Troy Williams and how he's progressed this season. I do not like Josh Love at all. I'm going to say 18-13, Pittsburgh. It's going to be a very low scoring game. I'm not sure what the over-under is, but I would probably bet the under on this one. Let's go to the next game. We got the New Orleans Breakers at the Memphis Showboats. Let's go to Jonathan first again. What is your thoughts on this game? 5-3 versus 5-3.
I think this one is going to be pretty close and a little more high scoring than my last prediction. I'm going to say 27-24. I think McLeod's going to throw for over 325 yards, just around there.
What was that score? I'm sorry.
27-24 in favor of the Breakers.
All right. 27-24. All right, let's go to Mark next. What's your thoughts on these games?
Yep, I'm going Breakers. Gonna go 27. Man, that 27-24 score is good. I'll go 27-23 just to make it a little different. I like that 27-24 call.
100%. Pierce, what are your thoughts on this game? And this statement is completely true. I do.
I finally think the frauds known as the Showboats finally get a loss here. Like, somebody has to put them in their place. Might as well be the Breakers. I wanted to be Stallions, but then again, we beat them like 42-2 the first time we beat them, so whatever. I'll go with the Breakers here. 27-21.
Okay, we are pretty certain the score for New Orleans is going to be 27 points. Michael, what is your prediction? Is it 27?
Does that mean that I have to go 27-22 here?
I don't think you have to, but
do I have to? Like, is it like a staple for me to do this?
It is now.
Okay, Breakers 27-22.
Oh Lord, that's pretty funny. So check this out in the chat because I thought this was kind of surprising. Memphis are my only projected double-digit winners this week, but I think it'll be closer. Double-digit winners, Showboats over the Breakers. That's so interesting to me. Like, Freddie's pretty spot on with some of his predictions, so I'm kind of surprised by how high that point differential is. Chris says Ball Breakers 31-27, so he's also got a 27, but it's on the losing end. I'm gonna go New Orleans as well. I don't know if they get to 27 points, but just for the sake of the clean sweep,
27-25, Sam.
Sure, 27-25. Okay, I see what you're doing there. Okay, so moving on to the next game, we got the Birmingham Stallions at the Houston Gamblers. So let's go ahead and go to Jonathan again. What is your thought on this game?
This one's tough. I think I'm going to go with the Stallions because Magoo has just been so good that I think they're just going to keep on winning. So I'm going to say I'm going to keep the 27 trend going, 27-20.
All right, let's go to Mark next. Mark, what are your thoughts on the Birmingham Stallions at the Houston Gamblers?
I'm going to go Birmingham, and I will run out a 31-17 score.
All right, Pierce, what are your thoughts on this game? Birmingham by 1 million?
I wouldn't say by 1 million. I actually think it's going to be just as about how the Stars game went out. I think it's going to be very close. I hopefully would think that the Stallions do a better job, keeping Thompson in check And honestly, like I said, if gamblers keep a heart in, I'm not scared. So ultimately, I still will go with Stallions, but I'm going to go 24-21.
Michael, what are your thoughts on this game?
If I'm the only one that isn't sold on the QB play in Houston right now,
I don't like it.
because I think it's absolutely been terrible, and I think they're trending in the wrong direction. Like, I think it's absolutely heading in the wrong direction, even though they won last week. Mark stole my score, so just to be different, I'm going to go 31-18.
That's a tough.
over.
That's a tough
Birmingham.
total. 18.
18, yeah. Well, they're going to do it somehow. It's going to be all field goals.
6 field goals.
Yeah.
Mark Thompson touchdown.
Guys,
Oh,
we're down by
field
2
goals.
touchdowns. Let's kick a field goal.
The Houston Stars
If
lose
it works for the
31-18.
Stars and the Showboats, they can do it too.
Could be 3 touchdowns with all missed extra points. Or maybe they went for 2 every time. You never know. All right. Well, man, I don't even know how to follow that one. I don't think Birmingham gets 31 points in this game, so I do see it closer to what Pierce said of a 24-21. I really like that score, actually. I think I'm going to go 24-20, just to be slightly different than his score, I guess. And then the last game this weekend, Philadelphia Stars at the New Jersey Generals. Let's go to Jonathan first again.
I just looked it up. It's supposed to be raining in Canton that day, so I think it's going to be extra low scoring. I'm not super afraid of either team's passing game. I'm going to go. I think the Generals are going to break through and finally get their 3rd win, and the North is going to stay super tight in that playoff race. I'm going to go 14-10.
All right, 14-10. New Jersey, interesting. So let's go to Mark next. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I got New Jersey running the ball all over Philadelphia. So, and I do agree. I think both teams are going to try to establish the run. So I got the under on this game, and I'm going to go with 23-13. And Pierce, I donated, so let's go.
Very nice. Love it. Pierce, what are your thoughts on this game? And way to go, Mark. I love that.
Appreciate it. Yeah, like you guys, if it rains, I expect it to be running. And like honestly, I do pick Victor over, Williams and Colburn, but I think that the Stars will just have the better, I think, deep threat, like huge big play type of edge of like Corey Coleman going deep. And I think they could be able to pull off a couple big plays. Not saying that is going to be a shootout, but like I feel like the Stars have an edge of just being more explosive than New Jersey. So I'm going to go with Philadelphia on this one. I go 20-14.
Man,
All right. I was not expecting that. Michael, what are your thoughts?
this one's hard for me because on paper, with Brewcop starting and Darius Victor outside of his stinker last week, you would think the Generals' run game in a rainy type weather is going to end up dominating or, controlling the way that the game is played. But the Generals don't really look inspired. They don't really look like they're playing football because they care right now. So I think that's going to play into this game, and I think the Stars probably edge out a stinker of a game, 17-10. I just don't see the New Jersey playing inspired football right now, and I just don't know if it's going to translate or not at this point in time.
Your take is echoed by many General fans, I'm sure.
And just so you know, Pierce, I donate to St. Jude's every year, twice a year.
Man.
So
Gotta love it. I'll have to step it up, I guess. My prediction for this game is, I haven't really thought about this game a whole lot yet. I've been kind of trying to digest this past game because I was really encouraged by the Stars' performance. So I do think that they go into New Jersey or Canton, I guess in this particular case, they go into New Jersey's house and they ultimately get the victory. I'm going to say 24-17. Um, and it's going to be an interesting game. Dexter Williams is currently our only healthy running back. So it'll be interesting to see if they go pick up another running back because I do think that we're going to need to ultimately have a strong running game to win this game, given the weather, like Jonathan said. Freddie makes a great point. If New Jersey loses this game, you have to put Eric Berrier in for the last week. I mean, you can't continue to keep him on the bench. He's a promising young talent. He might be the future of your quarterback position, depending on how you feel about DeAndre Johnson. So I completely agree with that. Chris does as well. Anybody else got any final thoughts before we get out of here for the evening?
I just want to. I'm going to different spring league, summer league here real quick. The ELF, the European League of Football. I told you, Sam, I was going to plug this real quick just because. If you guys, they have a league pass. It's a little over $100 for every game, but they have individual games that you can buy that are $5 per game. Pierce, you make that face, but it's 107 games, so it's comes out to $1 a game when it's all said and done. That you can see, but this league is legit. They have really quality play. I was really impressed with week 1 across the board. I do have an article coming out tomorrow that I had been working on tonight that I didn't get a chance to finish, but it will be out tomorrow, detailing my first week, full-fledged week of the experience with this league, and it's legit. I just wanted to plug it real quick before we got off here because I might have a show surrounding it coming out here in a couple weeks as well. So
very nice. Jonathan, where can everybody find your articles?
Those are all at cflnewshub.com.
Very nice.
And then, of course, posted on my Twitter, too. I linked them there.
Absolutely. And it's at Jonathan Klink, correct?
Yeah. I want to echo what you said about Eric Berrier. I don't get how he didn't get a single pass attempt in Michigan. It was criminal that he didn't get an opportunity there.
I don't understand why Mike Nolan didn't like him. Made zero sense to me.
I kind of wonder if he was calling for, or not necessarily calling for, but like telling him, hey, if you aren't going to play me, let me go somewhere else where maybe I have a chance or something like that. And I don't know anything. This is not insider information. I'm curious to wonder because I honestly don't see any other reason why you let go of that guy. Talk about one of the most promising talents in this league, let alone for your quarterback 3. Are you kidding?
Yeah. In the first 4 or 5 games for Michigan, they were giving Carson Strong like a bunch of drives. And then the first game Carson Strong was injured, they had Berrier in, and they didn't give him any drives. They didn't give him any plays. So, in spring football, there's no preseason. You got to give these guys a shot to see what you're working with, and they didn't.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's completely fair. Chris wants to know what jersey you're wearing, Pierce.
I don't know if you could see it, but it's from my school.
Utah
Tech baseball jersey, Utah Tech. So I got it off a giveaway. They made some baseball jerseys, so I decided to wear it today.
Very nice. And then we got one more question for you, Mr. Washington. What position do you play, or did you play?
I played primarily center. I was a defensive tackle and inside linebacker as well. I was undersized as a defensive tackle, but I had one of the best swim moves on my team, so I was able to make up for it a little bit with the lack of size. But I played inside linebacker, but primarily center is my position.
Very nice. Just a quick update on the CIF playoff game going on currently. Right now, Billings has the lead 25-19. They also have the ball. They're driving down the field. There's 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter. It does look like it's very promising for Lorenz Stefan and the Billings Outlaws yet again. So we'll see how the game finishes up. Looks like 7 more minutes to go.
I didn't even mention this. Sorry, no, I meant to mention this earlier. Sam, if I am correct, we have a CFL show starting too as well with Brian Snow. It'll be me and Brian. Not this week, even though they're starting. Even though the CFL season starts this week, my fault. But the week after, I believe, is when we are hoping to launch, if I'm correct. So I wanted to plug that as well because I'm a huge CFL fan as well.
Definitely. Yeah, we'll have some CFL stuff. We'll have some USFL stuff from XFL. Whenever there's news still to cover, which the drafts are going to be coming up fast and frequently. So it'll be very interesting to check that out. Here's some advice, by the way. Andrew says, "Sup, boys? Tell Michael he needs to do that ELF podcast." So that's kind of funny. He must have just missed that.
Yeah.
Noise in the trenches. Cool, Chris says. Mark, where can we catch your XFL and USFL DFS podcast?
Yep. My podcast is Apple, Spotify, whatever, all the platforms. At DFS Marlin, at DFS_Marlin on Twitter. FantasyGuru.com is where you can find all of my exclusive content. So go and hit the subscribe button over there. Couple closing remarks. Michael, I'd be curious to see if there's stats, like good stat keeping on the ELF, because if so, then I'd be curious to keep up with it a little bit more. Number 2, 17. What?
Sorry, I thought you had a break there. I was answering questions. Sorry.
I gotcha. 2, CFL. I'm excited to keep up with that, so I'm looking forward to listening in. And number 3, EB. I don't, some of these coaches, man, like they get fixated on one skill set. I think honestly, it's because these coaches, they don't know how to call plays with certain quarterbacks. Like they don't want to try to figure it out. They just have known one way to call a game all their entire careers, and they don't want to reinvent the wheel. So they just move on. I think that's what it is. So
he's really looked like a coach that has been slow to adjust at times too. So I think that I would definitely echo.
Yeah, definitely agree.
To answer your question real quick, Mark, before we get over to Pierce, the ELF was delayed on their stats for week 1. They are launching their fantasy, the one that I tagged you in on Twitter, this week heading into week 2, but their stats are all updated on ELF right now. And their top 5 quarterbacks all threw for over 300 yards last week.
So in other words, Michael's planting the seeds for you being his ELF fantasy expert as well.
We need some DFS contests, man. I gotta have some skin in the game.
Their number 2 quarterback as far as yardage was concerned threw for over 300 and threw 6 touchdowns last week. So
it's crazy. It's crazy to see how different it is, but still the same game. Pierce, what are your final thoughts for the evening?
So, just to reiterate, Pierce Sports Productions. Find me on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. I'm all there. A week ago, released a video about Quentin Flowers, who is a USFL Bowl legend, made it to the Hall of Fame. He was on the Fan Control Football League with the Beasts. He was in the XFL with the Vipers and the Orlando Guardians. So check that video out because it's a really good story, So check that out. I'm also sitting on a couple scripts right now, so I'll be on the lookout for some new content, and I'll be here as well, doing the show every week. So
very nice. Looking forward to next week. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us as well. Mark, thank you again for making the time to come out and join us as well. And then next episode, we'll be talking some playoff.
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs?
I know I didn't edit out that CIF there, but I had to use it while I had it. Freddie says I'll have to drop my QB ratings in the Discord tomorrow. So if you're not a part of our Discord server already, make sure to go hop over there and join us. We do put a lot of stuff in the Discord that we don't put out on our social media, just strictly based on who's in there. It's a little bit more, I don't want to say exclusive, but it's kind of how it is right now. There's only like 40 or 50 people in there. So a lot of stuff gets shared there that you wouldn't necessarily see out on Twitter or Facebook or something like that for us. And then Freddie says for ELF, just to be clear. Anything else before we get out of here? I'm going to take that as a no. Thank you, everybody who joined us. Thanks, Andrew Murray, for tuning in there at the end. And then, yeah, like he says, playoffs, I'm just hoping we can win a game. That's probably exactly what every New Jersey Generals fan is thinking right now. But I'm going to leave you with this little gem, and then we'll get on out of here for the night.
This is Brett, and you're watching Shady Sports Network. Tune in, hit that like button.
You might wonder, what do these guys do? Player signing announcements. I never in a million years thought you would actually come on to break this news. So without further ado, go ahead and tell everybody what happened today.
Yeah, man. I just had to work out with the Cincinnati Bengals. Signing me right out.
Without further ado, I'd like to announce that, I'll be taking my talents to Salina Liberty.
This just in. The Major League of Football is reportedly collapsing, unable to pay hotel room bills, with players being kicked out of their rooms and hotel managers asking them to leave voluntarily without issue.
And then we got Lions wide receiver Williams is debuting this week as a starter. That's something to look at as far as the eye test goes. And then another one on the eye test is Mostert might be coming back to Miami. And we can see if he has a role in this offense and see if he can be viable for the next couple weeks coming and help us in the playoffs and possibly towards a championship. That would be very nice because he's sitting on my bench right now.